Hey, it's Jay from Pacific Northwest Sports. Hope you enjoy the newest podcast. If you ever want a wall like mine, please check out Green Gridiron. They're an amazing company capable of making any of the helmets you see or any helmet you can imagine. Their link is below and the QR code is right here. As always, you can check us out on any of our social medias. Enjoy! Coach Jacob Biviano over at Corban College. How you doing, Coach?
Good. How are you?
Doing well. So happy I was able to get you on the podcast. Obviously, it's something that's pretty new for me and getting everything going. So why don't you just kind of tell us about your career and where you started and how you ended up here and why you enjoy coaching?
Yeah, sounds great. Well, first off, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to be a part of this, especially sun coming off the ground. So first off, thank you for that. So I started my basketball career when I was really kind of going into high school. My freshman year, went to South Salem High School in Salem, Oregon, and it's a pretty competitive program. Just coming off a state title a couple years prior, and tried out for the team, and I was 5 feet, maybe 100 pounds soaking wet, and didn't make the freshman team. And so I had one of my leadership teachers, she said that her son at the time was playing baseball at Stanford, and said that they had managers there that were making full ride scholarships and stuff to just be a part of the team, and that if I really loved sports, then that's the route I should go. And so jumped on with South Salem and just became their manager, and really just spent a lot of time in the coaching rooms and discussions and scouting and that sort of stuff. Never ended up playing in high school, but found my passion through that way. I had a great mentor in Mike Plank, who's now the associate head coach at San Francisco on the men's side. And he was working in the school at that time, and I would always go to his classroom and watch film and break down film with him at that time, and bring in a notebook full of game notes and stuff from college or NBA games I would play, and I would talk through the game of basketball. And so really just helped fuel my love for coaching. Didn't want to leave the game I loved. It just was something I was really passionate about. So following that, I decided to go to Oregon State and became a manager with their men's team. Worked 3 years under Craig Robinson, his final 3 years, and then Tinkle's first year. Just really learned a lot. Really just tried to get my hands on as much of the basketball side of things as possible, whether it was working guys out or being part of workouts that coaches were putting on, or going through the logistics of a recruiting visit, or even just the likes of recruiting and what that looks like. And just seeing that side of the game. Obviously, managers are in charge of pretty much all the logistical stuff, making sure everything behind the scenes is running smoothly. So that became really important to me. So I just really tried to get my hands into every facet of the game of basketball, from the equipment to athletic training to the administrative side, and really just fed into that. And so I had a great 4 years at Oregon State. And going out of my senior year, I decided to join a good friend of mine, Ryan Schmidt, who's now the head coach of the London Lions, out in London. Was the head coach at a prep school in Greenville, South Carolina, called 22 Feet Academy. So I went out there for a year, and it was cool being on that side. We ended up having 10 kids go to college that year, 5 of them to Division I schools, and one of them's playing in the G League now. So just a great experience on that side, and also getting to experience recruiting from a high school player side. Obviously, we would have tons of coaches in the gym watching our guys, and so rather than being the one selling the university, I was the one that you had to sell the university to. So that was a really cool experience, just getting to see both sides. I learned a lot through that time and had a great experience out there. So that was in 2016, and then came back here to Salem, Oregon, and took a year off. I just needed a break. My brother was a senior in high school. He was playing his final year. He just had brain surgery that summer, and so kind of just wanted to be near him and his senior year of high school and his basketball career coming to an end, that sort of stuff. And so took a year off and still kind of stayed around, ran a youth basketball league at the gym I was working at and that sort of thing. And Corban University came calling, and was able to jump on staff with their men's team in 2017. Jumped on staff with them and got to work under Austin Johnson for a year that year. And then the next year I worked under Mitch Freeman. So I was with the men's side for 2 years. In 2019, I just decided I needed a break. Wasn't sure exactly. Obviously, at the NAI level, you're not making a ton of money. And so I was kind of at those crossing roads of single, broke, and trying to figure out what to do next. And so just kind of felt like God was leading me away from coaching for a season and just to reset and refocus. And I'm glad he did. I mean, COVID hit in 2020 and Freeman ended up leaving at the end of that year, into the 2019 season, and 2020 he left. And so just that was great timing. Met a beautiful girl, and she really encouraged me to get back into the game of coaching. And so ended up happening was the head coach, Bill Pilgrim, I was dating his daughter, so she's his daughter, and he approached me with the opportunity to join the coaching staff. And I kind of viewed it as, if I really like coaching, then I will like coaching women. If I'm in it for the glamour and the fame that kind of comes with it, then it's not right for me. It's not a reason to do it. And so I got accustomed to a certain lifestyle at Oregon State and really didn't get that back. Obviously at the NAIA level, it's just different. So jumped on with the women's staff, and I haven't looked back since. It's been a wonderful time. You asked why I love coaching, and just building those relationships, and just getting to mentor and disciple and just walk through life with some amazing young men and young women during this time. And that's really what I do coaching for, is coaching off the court.
That's amazing. So you said you were at South Salem and you didn't end up playing on the team, and they said, hey, what about being a graduate assistant? And kind of realized that's a way to go on those teams. What was that process like going to colleges? Because I know that's got to be a whole different type of level getting onto that versus, on the football side or other sides like that when you're just a regular recruit, right? They're just saying, come here.
Right. Yeah, I was very fortunate. Oregon State was kind of the school I wanted to go to. Obviously, Duke would have been awesome too, but those were kind of some of the schools I was choosing from. But I decided to stay local, and fortunate enough for me, the academic counselor for the men's basketball team at Oregon State, his son attended South Salem High School with me. So I got really close to his son over the years while I was in high school, and really built a relationship with the dad. And so it's really, basketball is all about who you know, and just building those networks and those sort of things, and being personable, willing to put yourself out there. And that's kind of what happened on the manager side. Like you said, it's really easy if you're a former player to get in as a grad assistant or, that sort of stuff, or a Dobo or a video ops guy. But when you're a, 5'7" guy that's never played competitive basketball, it takes a different type of path. And so I'm really enjoying this path that I'm on.
That's amazing. So there's got to be some sort of, difference between coaching women and men's in terms of the game, and people have their different viewpoints on it and the beauty of the game. I, for one, when I watch women's basketball, I see it being a lot more fundamentally sound and just a lot cleaner of a game. Maybe that's the old version of me being like, I want to see things go a little slower at a tempo, but what's your opinion on that? How do you like the games? How do you compare them? What do you enjoy watching more?
Yeah, the difference between men and women is just women are a lot more relational, and you really have to foster that relationship. I kind of felt like, and my background, I just felt like I constantly had to prove myself with the guys. And God gave me a lot of opportunities to be successful in that, but it is one of those things where guys, like, we're constantly rubbing our egos against one another and seeing who kind of comes out on top. There's always a power struggle, whereas women tend to give you that respect, and you got to lose it. And your work, you work to lose it, and that sort of stuff. Like, whereas men, it's like you really are just constantly trying to earn their respect, and that power play. You're right. It's a much more fundamental game. There's just the athleticism catching up, but it's not there. And I don't know that it ever will catch up. But it is one of those where the fundamentals are on display. A lot more coaching and gamesmanship, I think, comes into play with women's basketball. You see a lot more just impact that a quality coach can have on a team. I personally, I love coaching women's basketball, but I still love watching the men's game. I just love the athleticism and just the talent that you see on the men's side. But it is really exciting to watch eager women try to get to that point. A lot of skills work they want to do that's the same as the guys, and maybe they're not finishing with a dunk every time, but they're working on finishing with toughness and layups and that sort of stuff, and still want to make the same moves that the guys are making. So it's very cool seeing the fundamentals kind of meet that skill side.
That's awesome. So you mentioned a little earlier Oregon State and kind of the perks you're getting there over at a D1 school versus what you're getting over here and NII and that type of deal. I don't know if a lot of people necessarily know those differences, so why don't you give us a couple main ones that people might be a little shocked to know?
Yeah, I mean, the first one is, I think, obviously budgets is a big deal. The TV contracts are massive, and they make a big difference. A lot of people don't know that men's basketball and football oftentimes are the two programs that fund the entire athletic department and keep the athletic departments afloat. And so there comes a different pressure that comes with men's basketball at the Division I level compared to NAIA level, because there's so much more money and there's so much more at stake. I compare NAIA basketball, for those that don't really understand the difference. What NAIA means, it's its own entity. It's not part of the NCAA. I think it has the talent of a D2 type school and the education of a D3 is kind of how I describe NAIA schools. A lot of private schools, whereas Division I schools are going to be a lot of state schools. Academics is really important at the NAIA level, and you just have a different kind of perspective when you're an athlete going into an NAIA school compared to a D1. If you're going to a D1, you still think that the professional route is still available to you, and you're going to pursue that avenue. Most NAIA players, they don't view that. It's their next step to funding their education and what they're going to go do afterwards. So we pretty much drive everywhere compared to flying like we did in D1. You have just a lot more things in logistics taken care of for you, and obviously you're playing in front of really big crowds at the D1 level, and you're playing against in great small environments at the NAIA level.
That's awesome. So you mentioned colleges bringing in a lot of money for major schools like basketball and football over at Oregon State, right?
Yep.
Looks like kind of like at Corban, right? Because the budget's still there. It still exists. So how do you measure that success? How do you know, hey, we're doing our part to bring in this money?
Yeah, I think the first part is when you're at a smaller school, enrollment is a very important thing, especially at a private school. And so for us, it's doing our part to make sure that we are bringing in a certain roster number. So ours is 16, minimum 16. So it's our job to bring in roster numbers. It's our job to be good stewards of the funds that come to us. You can kind of look up a story that happened, I think it was about a month ago now, where Washington State athletics was about 11 million in the hole, and a donor came and paid that. We don't have a donor that can come pay, a budget shortfall like that for us. So it's really just being good stewards of our money and making sure that at the end of the day that we are in the positive every year, and really balancing giving our students a great experience with fiscal responsibility. And so that's kind of the way we view it. Are our students still getting a great experience? Are we taking care of them? mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually? And then at the same time, are we taking care of the funds that have been granted to us?
That's awesome. So I have to ask, and, this is just the part of me, but if I guess this is a conflict that a lot of people face, and maybe I'm not smart enough to know the answer, but if like, okay, I'm playing NII, I'm not going to the pros. I'm here for an education. Why are you still playing a sport? Why not just go to a really good school for a really good education? Because you're not getting an athletic scholarship, right?
Actually, you are. So at the NAI level, we are able to give out athletic scholarships. And so that's really that's kind of the D2 part of the blend, is that we're able to give out athletic scholarships. And so that part's really important. Really what I try to do when it comes to athletes that are no longer looking to play basketball at the next level. I oftentimes was told growing up, like, leave places better than you found it, and that sort of thing. And I'm really big on wanting to leave a legacy. And so I try to instill that in the players I work with is, are you leaving this place better than you found it? What are you going to be remembered for? And what can basketball teach you that'll make you successful in the workforce? And so, it's different going to college. These are girls that you haven't met before, and they're coming from all different walks of life. Whereas high school, you've been together since you were, 8, 10 years old, if you haven't ever moved. So it's, how do you blend a bunch of different people from a lot of different areas and pursue a common goal? And that's what the workforce is, And so that's kind of the shift that we take, and remind them that, you are getting athletic scholarships. So I think that's often lost in this conversation about athletes getting paid is, I didn't get my school paid for. That wasn't how Oregon State worked. I didn't get a scholarship, but I'm paying you to come play basketball and be a good student. And so it's a job. And so in that respect, you have a duty and a responsibility to carry out.
What does that make you think about? What does that make you think about NIL? Because that's a huge thing right now. I actually speaking with a coach yesterday, Rohali. He's done some recruiting stuff for a bunch of different colleges around, and he mentioned how NIL might need more standards, right?
Yes.
Like, you got to be able to watch it. But it's a hard thing to do, and it's a hard thing to get different players in different sports to monetize themselves because, for example, a quarterback at a D1 school like Caleb Williams over at USC, super easy. Everyone knows who he is. He won the Heisman. He's going to be a first-round pick in the NFL. But then you also have a dude like their third-string nose tackle. No one knows who that is. I don't know who that is. I would think most people don't know who that is. So how does that go about? How does he monetize himself? And it was a really interesting talk. It'll be up, obviously, after this podcast. But how do you go about that?
Yeah, and then so NIL is not something we have to deal with at the NAI level. I don't know if it'll ever get down to us. But when I was in college, I think it was my junior year. So this was back in like 2013, 2014. Jay Billis, who I really respect and admire, being a Duke player, but then also a lawyer, and now ESPN broadcaster, wrote a really great piece about the importance of athletes learning how to market themselves and what their value is in the marketplace. And I think that is the biggest thing that I want the NIL money to start turning to. Right now, you have a lot of boosters that are like, the talk was about Drake May, for instance. Ohio State, the rumor was they were going to pay $10 million, for him to come transfer to Ohio State. And he hadn't even said he was transferring. That was just kind of the going rate. And what that kind of signals to me is that boosters and schools, not really schools, but more so boosters and collectives, are buying players rather than the players working to earn their money. I don't think a player like Trevor Lawrence should be penalized for going home to Georgia following a Heisman type year and running a quarterback's camp and making 10 grand on it, and the school, the NCAA saying, well, you're that's illegal. I don't think you should penalize a kid that works really hard to put a camp together, puts out a great product, and then makes money, especially during the summer. What I don't really appreciate is just I don't want the love of the game to get lost in the whole mix of this. When is too much money a thing? I mean, I was listening to Dan Patrick this morning, and he was talking about how LaMelo Ball just signed a $260 million contract, and he's played 3 years, and Charlotte's never even sniffed the playoffs. And he was getting all that money beforehand through the big baller brand and all that kind of stuff. And so that's just kind of where I see it going. Is just we need more standardization, and I think it's important that we teach these student athletes what their worth is in the marketplace, because they're still getting their scholarships, and their stipend was still pretty good. You're still a broke college student, but I think that's an important phase of life to go through. And so how do we help them understand that? That's kind of my big opinion on the NIL deal. I think it's great. I think they should be able to use their name, image, and likeness to make money. But I think it should be on their own terms.
So you mentioned, speaking of broke college students, you said, hey, you left Corban for a year and you're a broke student and you kind of just had to reflect. What was that like? What was that year off? I know when I've spoken to old football coaches before, my brother's old coach, George Monica, he said, every year, even though I've been retired for this many years, my body just has a timer where it's like it's the season again. So What was that like taking that year off?
Yeah, it was tough. I decided to referee, so I got into high school reffing. My stepdad is a college referee for the past about 20 years of his life, and so I thought, if I do get back into coaching, I want to know what this side is like. I want to have a better understanding of what they go through. And there's a good way to make money too, and really just stay connected. So I did that. Attended a lot of Corban games. I was still working there as the gym manager. So I was still around the athletes a lot. So I would go to a lot of college games. I actually, for my brother's 21st birthday, I took him to Nashville, and we saw Vanderbilt and Tennessee play. That's where one of my kids was going from the prep school at the time. He was going to Tennessee, and my mentor, David Grace, who's now at Campbell Hall, was an associate head coach at Vanderbilt. So we got to see that rivalry game. And then we also saw Duke play Notre Dame at Cameron Indoor, so got to cross that off the list, and then got to see North Carolina play Virginia. And all that happened in February of 2020, so right before COVID hit. So just a neat experience to kind of cross some places off the list that you don't get to go to if you're coaching. So I just stayed around the game and reflected upon it. Was really what that year was about.
It's nice. So now you go back to Corban, you're there, you get a chance to go on as the assistant coach from your girlfriend that you're dating, her dad's over this bill.
Yep.
What was that conversation like? Was he just like, you want a job? Or how was that approached? How did that happen?
Yeah, it was one of those things where he had an assistant leaving, and knew that I was kind of considering it. Knew that I was going to go to the Final Four in 2020, March of 2020, and obviously it got canceled. And so just like the transfer portal and all that kind of stuff, it created a backlog of really experienced coaches that were kind of on their can, because they got let go or laid off, or were trying to get a job, and we didn't know what 2021 was going to look like. And so that was it. 2021 went through. I didn't coach. We didn't have a season in Oregon. We were the only state in the nation that didn't have a season for anything D2 or lower. So when he approached me in the summer of 2021, it was just hey, is this something? Actually, yeah, 2021. Is this something you'd be interested in doing? Are you looking to get back into it? And, I took the opportunity. Talked to my girlfriend about it, and now she's actually my wife, and so took the leap and haven't looked back.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
That's good stuff. So, oh man, it kind of all just comes together, right? It's
Yep.
the perfect story.
Yep. Yeah.
So when you're at Oregon State, you were under some coaches. What did you think about that dynamic? I often have heard that graduate assistants make the programs run. There is no program if it's not for those assistants. What was your responsibilities, your tasks, and how do you feel about that statement?
I think it's true. I think there is a level of just appreciation I think all coaches should have for those managers, and just a level of respect. We don't get a ton of publicity. Like I said, Jay Billis will shout us out and that sort of stuff, but our work goes unnoticed, and that's our job. If we do our job well, you will know that we didn't do. You will not notice us. I mean, I was always at the gym 3 hours before game time, setting everything up: waters, towels, locker rooms, getting the jerseys out, those sort of things. I was packing our suitcases for trips, and making sure that everything was in there. It's tough to be in, Pullman, Washington, and realize that you didn't send your star player's jersey, and now you're, that didn't happen to me, but it's one of those things that it can happen. And so what it does is it builds a high level of attention to detail. And I'm a perfectionist, and so really fed into that part of me. And also, I was very involved in just the day-to-day practice, making sure that the clock was running smoothly and the hoops were up and all those kind of things. And so they make the program work. They really do. And I have obviously I did it, so I know their shoes, but I always try to remind coaches to have a great amount of respect for what they're doing.
What made you end up leaving Oregon State?
Just graduating and just Tinkle was his first year. I was with him for his first year, so he kind of already filled out his staff and any graduate assistant positions. And so my undergrad was coming to an end, and just had this really unique opportunity to go out to South Carolina, which is a place I always wanted to live, and do that for a year.
You said you had a camp over in South Carolina. You had 10 dudes who were 10 dudes being recruited. 5 went D1 and 1's in the G League, right?
Yep.
Who's that player in the G League?
Who is it?
Yeah.
Jordan Bowden.
Okay.
He plays for the Long Island Nets, I believe they're called.
So you said that you had to kind of sell the university to other people, which was a big flip, I believe is what you were saying. What was that like? What were those conversations like, and how did that go?
It's as a 22-year-old guy that's just fresh out of college to walk into the gym and see the likes of, Larry Kostoviak and Mick Cronin and Ed Cooley standing there watching your players. It's wild. It's just a surreal experience. Walk into a gym and know that Roy Williams is there to watch one of your kids. It's awesome. What it helped me do is approach the game with some sobriety and some realizations that, man, I'm a big Duke guy, but I have a lot of respect for Roy Williams, and can't get caught up in the name that's kind of standing in front of you, and you're helping a kid make a decision for hopefully 4 years, and that was a big deal to me. I like to make sure, even when I'm recruiting now, that I'm recruiting a girl that's going to be there for 4 years, and that's going to fit for 4 years. I think it's a stressful situation to have to move again and to find a second school and that sort of stuff. So that was a really big deal for me. I didn't really field a ton of the phone calls and conversations. That was kind of Ryan's job, and some of our other more experienced coaches that had been on staff for a while. But still, just one of those unique experiences to realize, one, is this a kid that I want to put my reputation on as the high school coach, and constantly reminding the guys that I have coaches calling me for references, and the way you act is a reflection on me. And so that's a big deal. And so just that kind of flip was very interesting. It was a fun experience to see that side of things.
Good. That's really interesting, actually. And I think that gets missed a lot of times is when coaches are talking about their players, they're constantly saying, "Hey, they're calling me. They're asking for me to give you a recommendation." And then on top of that, I have to be honest with them and tell them, "Yeah, this is the type of player so and so is," and that win or lose, it's coming back to you somehow. So when the next coach calls, hopefully Roy Williams isn't going, "I don't trust his one."
Yeah, exactly. Well, and as a 22-year-old guy, like I'm being at that prep school was not my end of my journey. It was just the beginning, So if I'm out there making bad references, it reflects poorly on me, and then they go, well, do I want to give this guy a job? And so it works both ways. And I think, when you're young, you don't really realize that. That's not really your focus, is how is it going to reflect on my coaches? You're kind of just thinking about yourself, which is to an extent fair, but also like I got a job, I got to feed, my family, I got to pursue my goals, and you play a vital role in that.
So you said it was a prep school. What's that main difference? So I've always heard that a prep school is like a tweener, right? It's a high school, but it's also kind of run like a college program because the idea of the player being there is we're trying to get you to that next level. It's the tween, essentially. What's that like?
Yeah, we don't really have a ton of them on the Pacific Northwest, or even the West Coast in general. And so it's a unique intersection of, like you said, tweener years and also high school. So we had a blend of high school kids, but also post-grad kids. So post-grad kids were typically kids that obviously they don't do it anymore, but your SAT and ACT scores are kind of what determined you getting into school. And so kids that got really poor grades there or were kind of on the fringe GPA-wise. And so you're allowed to retake one class and get that replacement grade put in. And so that's kind of what we dealt with on the post-grad side. So they had their high school diplomas, but they weren't eligible to college, or they thought they could go higher. And so maybe they had NAIA or D2 offers, but they believed in their heart of hearts that they were a D1 player. And so kind of taking a risk on themselves to come try that out. And so, but yes, we were partnered with a Christian school in Greenville. And so we dropped the kids off that were high school students. We drop them off in the morning like they were normal students and come pick them up in the afternoon. And the post-grad kids, we would have usually like a 2 or 3 hour study session, get their work done, and then work out, twice a day and practice games and all that kind of stuff. So it was it was a tweener, but it was a good opportunity for kids to learn what it's like to be away from their parents too.
Yeah, I mean, to go to a school like that and really take that bet on yourself and say, I know I'm a D1 kid, that is a huge bet on themselves. And that's a really stressful thing for a kid who's 18 or 19 to do. And I mean, you have to be mentally strong playing at any level of sport. You have to be extremely mentally strong to go to the next level. But tell me about just the heart-to-hearts you had to have with kids at certain levels, because there's no way that you had kids who were coming here that were like, I'm D1, and they went D1, right? You eventually had to have the true talk of like, this is what you are, this is where you are. And how did that go? Was it hard on you? Was it hard on them?
It was hard on them. I would say that as a coaching staff, we were big on blunt honesty. These kids are paying a lot of money to be there. And so, they're not them, but their parents were. And so it's not one of those things where you take out a student loan and come to the school. That's out of your pocket. And so there were a couple kids that we sent home early, really early on, like maybe October, and just said, look, like your investment, this is not good money for you to invest. I think you need to go just be a normal student, take this money, go to college. And then also we had kids that would stay and constantly remind them, like, your work ethic is not Division I. Your work ethic is not D2. Your investment is failure. And so constantly staying on them for that sort of stuff was tough. It's constantly, and I lived with the guys. I lived in the house and was kind of like overseeing it. And so just a lot of those conversations of helping the guys through things on and off the court, decisions, and those type of things was a lot of work.
That's got to be hard. So when you have a kid, right, and you're constantly harping on, hey, your work ethic is not D1. At what point are you as a coach getting to a frustrated level where you're like, I can see the potential in you. You don't have the work ethic to get to that potential. Why am I wasting my time here? Right. And so there's two ways to look at that. Either A, I'm wasting my time, or B, let me make this my success by getting this kid there. But how do you know that you're not just doing nothing for nothing?
Sometimes you don't know till it's after the fact, and it's all said and done. And that's the tough part. What I really try to do is try to love on all my athletes and be, encouraging and work with them and constantly remind them of the goals that they set for themselves, whether it was those D1 kids at the prep school or, now with the young women that I coach, but constantly remind them of their goals. And do you think you're getting to that? And then there's also that question that comes at a certain point when you're not working to the level you need to be to get where you want to go is, do you actually want this? Is this your dream? Are you doing this for someone else? And those are some questions that I ask as well. Do you have parents that will pay out that money because they're living through their child? And that's, where the kid may not love it very much, but the parent does. Those are some of the conversations, but I think kids, from my experience, kids have noticed when I have stopped putting in the extra effort to push them, and it kind of just, I wouldn't say gone cold shoulder, but really just minimal with them, because like you said, I've got people that really want to be here and really want to do what they're doing, and so I'm going to go invest in them. But yeah, sometimes you don't know till afterward, and that's the disappointing part.
So when you see a kid go off to a college that came through you and something doesn't click, are you still in contact with that kid, messaging them like, hey, what's going on, right? Are they texting the coach, I need help, here's what I'm saying? Are you still there to lean on, or are you the type of guy who's like, look, you're off to the big leagues now, you got to handle that?
The role I had at 22 Feet Academy, I was in the house with them every day, but Ryan and the other coaches really dealt with really going through the basketball side with them. And so I know Ryan would stay on top of the guys a lot and really be in their corner, or like you said, kind of just sometimes you have to write them off, and not pick up the phone. So I didn't really experience that at the time. Once I left and once they left, I'm not really in contact with any of them. I'm in contact with two of the players still after 8 years or so. But so it's not really one of those things where I had that, which I kind of wish I did. If I stayed around long enough, I'm sure I would have been in that position to have relationships beyond the high school. But I was probably one of like the high school teachers that you never see again and never talk to type of deal.
For sure. I know. I definitely get that feeling, that connection. And that's got to be hard. You're young, so you are literally basically these kids' peers, right? Like you're right in age group with them. So getting that respect, because like you said, there's that male ego constantly bumping in over and over again. And also trying to say, like, you have to listen to me. I am the one helping you to that next level.
Yep. Yeah, and for me, it was I able to humble myself, and say, hey, the only experience I have is being a part of a program for the past 4 years, being a part of a Division I program. That's my experience. So if you want to hear it, I'm here to help you. Like, I'm fresh out of college, and I'm here to help you with that. Um, but also, I think the kind of the approach that I took was I'm here to be your advocate. And I'm here to be someone you can go to um, when you're away from home and when your parents don't pick up the phone or when you need to talk. Like, that's who I'm here for. And I think that's where my relational side came out. And I think that's how I gained their respect. And that's how I gained uh, respect on the men's side to this day. Obviously, I'm on the women's side now, but even more so, even with Corban, we're so closely integrated that I do see the men's the men's team a lot, and just try to be relational. Because that's the thing with guys, is that we do need someone that's going to be our advocate, especially in basketball. There's always one coach at least one assistant coach that his job was just to be a sounding board for the players, because we need that.
Nice. So you took that. You said you also had a year where you refed. What was that like? Because I've refed a couple different sports, and from being a athlete to a coach to then reffing, it is so hard. I sometimes in football, when I was reffing, I'd find myself looking at the kids and I'd be like, "Oh, that was a crazy play." And then you realize that the team that play just happened to is 2 yards behind your back, and you're like, "Oh, snap," right? Then you're trying to remember, you're like, "Well, if I was playing, I'd let that go." And then you're like, I can't, so you got to throw that flag or, whatever. Maybe you have to call that foul. So what was that like? What did you learn, and how do you implement that now as a coach, saying, okay, I see that perspective. How do you work that?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I learned is just the speed of the game and the speed at which a referee has to make a decision is so hard. I encourage every coach, whatever it may be, like, don't do it in practice. That's a cop out. Go ref a summer league, go ref something, and just see how fast the game moves. One of the things that I was told early on when I got into this is I would remember calls, because I'm a perfectionist, right? So I would remember where I may have missed a call, or a coach was on me for missing a call. And I remember getting the advice of, man, just be consistently bad or consistently good. As long as you're consistent. If you're walking out of the gym and both coaches hate your guts, you did your job. If both coaches come up to you at the end of the game and say you did a great job, you did your job. But if you have one that's more upset than the other, you may have done something wrong, and so that was big. The other piece that I caught myself quite a bit doing was telling coaches, like, if I didn't make a call, like a kid tries to drive through the lane and there's like 3 players there and they throw up a prayer and he may have gotten hit, but he's so out of control, and the coach is sitting there yelling, foul, foul, foul. I'm like, really? Did you coach that? Did you teach them to do that? Because that's bad basketball, And so I remember kind of sometimes arguing with the coaches of like, dude, your player's forcing the issue. You really want me to reward him for that? So I often find myself now catch myself every once in a while telling an official he's out of position, and that usually doesn't go over well. But that sort of stuff. But just a newfound respect for what they do, and really just really trying to make sure that they are being consistent. If they're being ticky-tack, are they being ticky-tack on both ends? If they're letting the girls just fight each other, are they doing it on both ends? And that's really just what I go searching for. And honestly, I tell my players, like, they are called officials. I mean, if we're in a courtroom, they are the judge, right? And so they are the ones this is how they want the space to be occupied. And so they don't have to adjust to us. We have to adjust to the game that they want played. Now, obviously we're scouting another opponent, but if we have 3 officials that walk in there and like, you're not being physical tonight, well, then we're not being physical tonight. And so just those are some of the principles that I've taken from that side into the coaching.
That's amazing. I remember I was reffing lacrosse, and I played since I was in, I think, 4th grade. and I loved it through high school. And after high school stopped, I was like, I'm going to ref some more. In high school, I refed Little League, but I wanted to ref high school games. So I remember we had like a shootout over here, just like quick little 20-minute halves, kind of get through it, kind of like I do with basketball jamborees.
Yeah.
And I was refing a game, and a coach was just in my ear all game. And I was like, golly, this is terrible. And at one point, he looks at me and he was like, are you not going to call that? And the smart ass in me just turned to him and I go, look, just because your team's down by 20 doesn't mean I need to call. And I stopped. And he was like, what'd you say? And I was, that was a rough one. That was a can I rewind 10 minutes? Because this is bad. So
yeah, been there.
it's a rough one. It's a rough one.
Yeah.
On both sides, right? The coach is he's frustrated because he shouldn't have been yelling that loud to get into the ref's attention, right? But two, also, what do you do at that point where you're like, oh, you just called my entire team terrible?
Well, and to that extent too, it's tough when you're. One of the things I had to realize as a referee is that, especially when they're down, right? If there's a big gap, right? This coach has already yelled at his team enough, right? And so there comes that point where if you yell at your team so much, they don't think you're on their side. And so sometimes they have to shift it to the referees to show that, hey, I'm still fighting for you. I'm still engaged in this. But then there are some coaches that just come out swinging from the get-go, and those are the ones where you just I tried my best to just get thick skin and just let them yell. If a curse word came out or a personal attack towards me came out, then that's when I'm done. But for the most part, yelling that's a bad call or that's a travel or that's a whatever, it didn't really bother me that much. But
no, it's crazy. Refs have come a long way too. I mean, you look at some of the antics Bobby Knight used to have, and you think about it now, and you're like, if I threw a chair out in the middle of the floor, how many games am I suspended? Because it's definitely not going to be one.
Right. Yep, that's absolutely correct.
Oh man, reffing is seriously, I think, underrepresented. Not enough people talk about it. It's not represented, but it helps as a coach. I think it really helps you understand both sides.
It does. I just think it's one of those things where every player and coach, needs to do it, and that sort of stuff, and some capacity just to experience what it's like. Even if you're a player and you're reffing third grade basketball, how quickly you realize you're not calling everything because the game will last forever. Just those things. That's just important to learn. Like, I can't call that because I'm going to be here all day long, and so it's a very valuable experience.
So what's your goal for the next 10 years? When you close your eyes and you reflect and you say 10 years from now I want to be where?
I don't necessarily have a destination, but I do have a desire to be a head coach in the next 10 years and be establishing my program and get to lead my own program for the first time, and I'd be content anywhere that God put me. So that's a big deal for me. But definitely within 10 years, I want to be, hopefully, half of that I've spent as a head coach. but yeah, it's definitely the next 10 years I want to be a head coach somewhere at the university level for sure.
Okay, so you've been over and you've kind of done all your levels. You're on IA. You said it's a tweener. You've kind of done the prep school thing, and you've obviously done the majors. And you've done women's and boys. Do you have a preference from like, I want to be D1 in a P5 P5 is more football, but I want to be D1 in the Pac-12 and coaching, Wazoo basketball. What do you think?
Yeah, I would do either. Now, I think that for me, the way I'm wired, I think women's basketball suits me better and protects me better. I can get easily caught up in the rat race of basketball, and on the men's side, it's it's very go, 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 and it's very dog eat dog, and there's a lot going on. And so for me, that's something that I think I can protect myself a little bit being on the women's side. But if the D1 came calling, I would be just as happy as, a different NAI, or, if Corban were to call one day, or, another D2. I mean, for me, it's just, what's the best fit for me and my wife and, and hopefully our family down the road. It's just what we've kind of settled on. Level doesn't really matter to me anymore. It did when I first started, but now I am happy coaching the game.
So we talked a little bit about this podcast, obviously the title Pacific Northwest Sports, right? Heading on the Pacific Northwest, and you are a very PNW homer, right? I think that's really impressive and cool. And you went and lived in South Carolina, so you did across the country over there. Do you want to stay in the Pacific Northwest? Do you want to leave? Or is it just really like, hey, literally anything? I just want an opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, pretty much anything. I love the South. I love the pace of life that they live down there. It's just a slower pace, but I love the Pacific Northwest. And so I think I would go just about anywhere an opportunity presents itself. I'm not really, stuck on one area in particular. I think sometimes our network leads us to stay in a certain region. So naturally, I think the way my network is, that probably Pacific Northwest, but I'm just open hands and just ready to go wherever I'm led.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So Corban now, we got an upcoming basketball season coming.
Yep.
We're excited for that.
Yep.
Who are 3 players that people should be watching out for, or they're going to be hearing a name a lot of?
Yeah, I think the first one is Maddie Godwin. She's a senior for us this year. She was a honorable mention this past season, and she's just a special guard. Very quick, very athletic, gets downhill. When she gets a step on you, you're not catching her. I've had the honor and privilege of working her out this summer and just watching her work ethic and her desire to finish her career strong. So Maddie Godwin's the first one when we're talking comes to my mind. The other one I'm really excited about is Maddie Hodnett. She's a 6'3" girl out of Idaho, and so her freshman year we were planning on redshirting her. She'll be a junior this year, so planning on redshirting her. Injuries and suspensions happened. She ends up playing. I think she played the last 12 games of the season pretty consistently, and was averaging a double-double when she started. And so it's just very impressive. I kind of compare it to baseball, right? We see these when baseball players come on the scene, they're crushing fastballs over the fence, right? And then pitchers realize, oh, he can't hit the slider. So every pitch then from there on out is a slider, and the superhuman comes back to earth, and I kind of think that's what happened with her sophomore year. And so this past season was just kind of teams scouted her, knew what was coming, and that kind of affected her. But I'm really excited. She put in a lot of work this spring, got in really good shape. So I'm excited to get her back on the court and see her as a focal point of our team, and just excited for that. And then, yeah, our third person I think is probably Kirsten Conkey. She's our point guard. She's been at Carroll and Westmont, and now she's going to her second year with us, and she'll be graduating at the end of this year. What she is she's our culture builder. That's one of the things that Bill and I, going into last season, really focused on restarting the culture from the ground up, and she's been a huge influence to that. She's very good at building bridges amongst players and building community within a team, holding our culture accountable. She's just an absolute workhorse. At all times, she's constantly wanting to get better, and for herself and then for the team. And so I'm just really excited to see her blossom into her senior year. I know that playing at Carroll and Westmont, she was behind some really good guards. And coming to Corban, we're rebuilding a culture and that sort of stuff. And we're not as successful as those schools were. But she gets to be a focal point and she gets to be active in building that. And so I'm really excited to see what her senior year looks like.
That's awesome. So I got 5 questions to finish you on up. We'll stop the podcast and then I'll probably talk to you for another 2. Won't take you too long, but 5 questions to end it off. So you're at a gas station. You guys are getting ready to go on a long road trip somewhere.
Yep.
You get a snack. You're going to get a drink. What are the go-to?
Mine is the lime Lay's chips.
Okay.
I love the limon chips or whatever they're called. And then I'm a big Body Armor guy. So drinking a Body Armor.
What flavor of Body Armor?
That's a good question. Probably the peach mango.
Okay.
Yeah, big peach mango guy.
Do you love it because of Kobe, or have you saw it in the store one time, tried it, and you were like, oh, this is it?
Yeah, kind of just mix of both. Keeps me hydrated, tasty, healthy for you. Kind of those 3 reasons more than anything.
All right, give me your favorite basketball player of all time.
All time, I'd probably say Brandon Roy.
Okay.
Yeah, look, Pacific Northwest guy, right? That's kind of growing up. He was the guy, and I just don't think people realize how good he truly was.
He was amazing. He coached Nathan Hale up here, led him to like a 29-0 year.
Yep.
I actually, that year I was a senior in high school. My school was in his division, so we had to play him. And that was a fun game.
Oh, I'm sure.
My little sister was at Nathan Hale, so we went to the game, and she was like, I'm sitting on that sideline, dude.
I don't blame her.
Neither do I. Hey, at one point, I think we hit a 3-point shot when we were up by 1. It's the only lead we had. It was like 2 minutes into the game, and that's it.
That's all that matters, right? You had it at some point.
Exactly. All right, so our favorite time of the year, it's probably basketball season, but what is it and why?
Summertime. Summertime is big. My wife's a teacher, and I get about a month of, really being able to disconnect from the job, or have, the role kind of dies down a little bit. And so just the opportunity to go travel, go, wine tasting, that sort of stuff, hanging out with friends and my wife, and just getting some time. So I think summer's been the best.
Our 4th one is, what is your favorite team at the high school, college, and professional level? It can't be anywhere you've played or coached.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll start with favorite high school. I'm gonna go with Campbell Hall for my boy David Grace down in LA. That's my favorite high school. College, it's got to be Duke. Duke or Gonzaga. Big fan of those 2 programs. And then professionally, any sport, or are we talking NBA?
Any sport.
I gotta say the Dodgers probably. It's my favorite professional sports team. Oh, and I can't believe I forgot Clemson, favorite college team. The girls know I dictate my entire Saturdays around what time Clemson football is kicking off. So, if we're talking favorite universities, I think Clemson is number 1. But from a basketball standpoint, it's got to be Gonzaga or Duke.
People love Dabo Sweeney.
I'm a big Dabo guy.
Oh, you're big. So when
big
they talk
Dabo
about
guy.
him going over to Alabama, what's your thought on that? Are you like, no way?
No, he's not doing it. He won't do it. He won't break my heart like that.
Oh, we don't know, man. That was doing some crazy things. So DJ, right? Your boy DJ over there.
Yep.
He's over at Oregon State now.
Yep. Super excited for that.
So you're excited to have him over at Oregon State, or are you one of those Clemson fans who's like, I'm just glad he's gone?
No, I think he was given an unfair opportunity at Clemson. I think you're following up Sunshine. He's a generational quarterback, and then you come in. The one game you have when Trevor can't play, you go crazy. And it's just like I said with like baseball players, right? He's the number 1 quarterback in the nation, and Notre Dame has no game film on him. So of course he's going to go crazy. And then just depleted wide receiver core the next year, and then this past season just didn't mesh. mesh well, and I'm really excited. I think it's very hard for a West Coast quarterback to go to the SEC or ACC and play in that style, but I think he's going to thrive at Oregon State. I'm excited to see him. He's a great guy.
I'm really excited to see what it does too. Oregon State went from being they've gotten so good under Coach Smith, and it's been so impressive to watch. And they're dominating in the trenches. They're kind of taking on that Utah mentality, being really physical.
Yep.
And they said, hey, all this team's really missing is a quarterback. We could be looking at a college dark horse contender. So I'm watching them. I kind of hope they make it too. I'm a big Wazoo guy, but Oregon State's my second school that I always hope wins.
You love that.
So our last question for you. If you weren't a coach, what would you be doing right now?
Man, I would probably be working, actually worked for a nonprofit that did educating and community building in the country of Haiti. So I think I would probably still be there if I wasn't coaching. I'd be working for them again.
Impressive. All right, Coach, I'm going to go ahead and end up the podcast here. But if there's anybody, if they want to reach out to you, how can they do that?
Yeah, email me. It's on the website. You follow me on Instagram. I think it's just Jake_Biviano. Feel free to reach out, send me a message. I also run the Corban women's basketball page. I think it's Corban WWBB. So Corban and the W for Warriors and then women's basketball. So I run that as well. So those are a couple places that you can reach me.
Have a good day.
Thanks for having me on.